you have to see it. I always imagine spirit as a puzzle. You take one observation, that's one piece of the puzzle, and you put it somewhere. You have no idea what it means, but you're not going to rely on knowledge. You are not afraid, which is the future. You are ready to be alone in that. Then comes another observation, and it's a total different observation. On the far end of the puzzle, on the other side, a picture. And you think, this is totally contradictory, this is totally wrong, it doesn't fit. But you are ready to stick to your own observation. And suddenly, the puzzle is not anymore a puzzle, it's a whole mess. You get the total picture. But if after the 2-3 observation, the pieces you have put, you start to rely on an authority, you will never create your own puzzle, your own picture, your own wholeness. So, what exactly does it mean, the here and now of Jesus? The now, we said, is the absence of time. The future, the past doesn't exist, that's knowledge. The future is fear. The basic and only psychological fear existing is the fear of not being loved, Verlustangst. So how do you come in the now? How do you come to the level of total observation of yourself without greedy for security, guru, authority, master, teacher? In being ready not to be loved. When you are ready not to be loved, all the fears are gone. That I promise you. The only way I discovered love was in the home, in an absolute system of no love at all. When you have absolutely no one who loves you, fear disappears. It's this greediness, and authority is that greediness for you have to love me. Envy, jealousy is this greediness for wanting to be loved, which creates the whole problem. And let me explain and say once more, I have said it 100 times, I like to say it again, you can be loved as much as you want as long it is not love radiating from you. You will not be happy, joyful, peaceful through being loved. It is not the love you get from others which brings you to spirituality. So the future is a simple, very simple problem of greediness, of wanting to be loved. Once that gone, conflict gone. The love from others, let me say it very unpolite, is knowledge, copy. Because, watch, they can feel their love for you, but you are only a mirror of that. You have to feel your own radiance. The sun shines on the earth, creates, let's say, the warmness, the light as love for the flowers, for the earth. Beautiful. But the flower has to come out by itself. It cannot rely on the sun. Otherwise, every evening the flower would start to behave like a human mind. I need to go to therapy, it stopped love. Can you imagine? I promise you, can you imagine? Just stop the greediness of wanting to be loved, and there is no more psychological fear. That's what Jesus means with understand the here and now. And therefore you understand all the mysteries, also the mystery of love, the movement of love. Let me put it even different. As much greediness have of being loved, as less compassion you can have. It does not go together. That's why I don't believe that Jesus or someone said, you should love yourself. This is a psychological concept. Not you should love yourself, you should radiate love. It's not directed. So is it possible? I promise if you just can make that step, you move, we talked yesterday about liberation, to a tremendous forward into liberation, the great way. Just stop this greediness for being loved. How much energy is spent in, does someone like me? Do they appreciate me? It is not about them. And as long that pattern is working, you can also not start to be without authority. It is not possible. Therefore, you cannot be free. So once more, the now of Jesus means stop the greediness for love, therefore no more future, therefore no more psychological fear, therefore all the business of jealousy and envy, authority gone, therefore a total ability, awareness, energy to observe oneself. Isn't that genius? I had to learn it the hard way. Why do you want to learn it the hard way? Why do you want to wait until the world hates you so much that you realize it doesn't matter? Have you observed? You all know it so deep in you. As more you are confronted with people who are greedy for your love, as more you try to avoid them. As greedier you are for being loved, as more you create isolation. This is a simple, deep law. But it doesn't matter if it's create this isolation, if it's all this business which happens then around the fear. That's superficial. The most important is that this greediness is the barrier for the total observation of yourself, therefore for wisdom. And that's why then Krishna comes in and says, when ignorance is destroyed by the knowledge of the self, that knowledge, you have to translate that knowledge becomes wisdom, is like the sun revealing God. Ignorance means that attitude of that you can rely on an authority, that you can rely on knowledge, And we said, why you do that? It's because the greediness of being loved. Once says Krishna that ignorance is seen, the knowledge, the usual, the past, the future is destroyed on the self. The self, we said yesterday, the day before, is spirit. So let's repeat it in these words. When the ignorance of this greediness of wanting to be loved is destroyed, there is the knowledge of spirit, which is wisdom. And like the sun, it reveals God. Why does Krishna use the words like the sun? It is a metaphor for light. And watch the beauty about light. Einstein was one of the first who put a mathematical formula about light. Does this elegant formula of light give you any idea about light? Does the elegant formula of the new quantum physics of the latest particle, what he keeps particle together, give you any idea? Not even to the physics it does. That's why they build the huge sensing in the deep hope they will find the particle, so that at least they don't have only the elegant formula. And does light have any form? Is light an object? Krishna uses the sun, which reveals God, because the light cannot be seen as a knowledge. The formula will not give you the observation of light. It cannot put in a form. You cannot take light in a box and sell it. You can also not analyze it really. It has no object. You can also not say, I love this part of the light. It is like spirit. That's why the word enlightenment. Moving into the light. But Krishna means first that ignorance, that only step. If you ask me, if you leave psychology behind you, why to make the whole detour? Even if your mother didn't love you, therefore you are more greedy for love than someone else, no one is arguing against that of course happens. If you didn't have a lot of love, you are a little more greedy. But why to make the detour? Just stop the ignorance, the idea that being loved will solve the problem. It is the ultimate problem. Do you really think, when you go deep in it, I said earlier, the Muslims and the Hindus fighting about a word, if Allah or Krishna or God. But if you go a little deeper, do you really think a war is carried out about the word? That's the superficial excuse. It comes out of this deep greediness. You are on my side, then I have the feeling you love me. If you don't do that, I kill you. It is not about being a Muslim, a Christian, a Russian, an Indian. It is about this deep greediness. You first love me, or I feel bad, therefore I kill you. Every war, even if there are some people who say war is done by economy, oil, etc. Every war at the end is a war of that greediness. Do you want to be part of that? That's what Krishna means with ignorance, and he promises once that ignorance is seen, the knowledge, the past, the future is destroyed, and like the sun, God is revealed. And that's why Buddha then continues in saying, the wise man who sees the world as an illusion. You have to grasp that sentence. The wise man who sees the world as an illusion does not act as it is real. Now watch the beauty again, the wisdom of Buddha. He's saying something very simple. If knowledge is a copy from what we explained about cognitive psychology, but also every book is a copy, then that knowledge is an illusion. Watch carefully, not in the naive sense of the Maya term that things don't exist. Knowledge exists in reality, but it is an illusion because it never fits totally your observation, the moment, the living. Past and future can only be lived in the now. Therefore, the knowledge is a part, your observation is a part, and if you do not see that knowledge, the past is an illusion, you are in conflict. The knowledge, that means illusion, only mirrors you half of the reality, never the whole reality. For the whole reality, you need your, at the moment, actual observation. And that's why Buddha says the wise man, he doesn't say the normal man. He says the wise man, someone who has seen and understood, as what Jesus has said, or Krishna, that there is to have to deal with that ignorance about the future. In my words now, the wise man is when you see that all psychological problems, let me repeat it, all psychological problems come out of the greediness of being loved. Then he sees that this is an illusion. Because it's half of the reality. And now listen, beautiful. And he says, and if you, because you see that, do not act as if it is real, being loved is only half reality, you need the other reality, which is more important, the direct radiance of love from you, because you don't act in it, therefore he does not suffer. To me, this is brilliant. He says, stop the greediness for being loved, therefore there is no future, therefore there is no fear, therefore stops all the duality, the conflict of the two realities. How can you suffer? You see, that's why I love deeply Jesus. To me, he is just a tiny little further than Buddha. In Buddhism, you still have to make an effort that you don't fall in the trap of a next life. Jesus says, in fact, with the word to forgive, with the word, the movement of what is going to happen with love. In fact, he says, do what you want. the mercy, the love of God is 1,000 times bigger than how you behave, so you anyway will land in heaven. Have you ever heard Jesus talking about hell? If compassion and love would mean that only if you behave, then I would understand the greediness for being loved, because how you behave would be judged by an outside source. If this would be the concept of love and compassion, I would say it's not worth anything. But Jesus said very clearly, you will be forgiven. And he doesn't say under this and this conditions. That, of course, is the death of any church. If the church preaches, don't bother, just be relaxed. It doesn't matter if you make a mistake. It doesn't even matter if you come to the church. Jesus' fundamental message is, you are forgiven. Who the hell needs to go to church? But it's in Buddhism the same. If it is a total observation of yourself, who needs to go in rituals? And Buddha says, therefore, he does not suffer. And that's the only thing I can guarantee you. I cannot guarantee you enlightenment, liberation, I don't know. But I can guarantee, once you stop the only fundamental psychological problem in this world, which creates time, which creates fear, with all the aspects of the feeling chain, stop the greediness of being loved, there will be no more suffering. And we are talking here about the second level of suffering, not the first pain of the body, mental pain. The first is not to avoid. And then Lao Tse continues in saying, the wise person sees and hears like a child. Jesus says, innocent like children. Now, I don't think any one of us would necessarily like to be again a child. If you look at our children, all the dependency they are in, all the stress they are in, all the demands they have to fulfill. Sometimes I would like to take Fabi out of all this mess, this pressure of knowledge of society. What they meant is that the child starts with that direct observation because it has no language. It cannot rely on anybody else. It cannot rely on knowledge how to learn to walk. It has to observe itself. It has a direct insight in its own movement. It has not read a book, when do I feel hungry and when I'm full. It has to observe it in itself. It sees the first colors, it sees the first smiles. It has to observe in itself what that means. Jesus and Lao Tse just mean you have to move back to that part of innocence. Not all the other things. Would you like to be again in purity? They mean just back to this direct perception of yourself. And have you observed, children, that what in a silly way Spitz and Piaget then tried to pathologize as the Trotzalter, the stubbornness phase. What is the stubbornness phase of a child? The saying, even if now you start to bring knowledge in, I stay in the observation of myself, even if it may be wrong. Beautiful. And with the time, it is crushed. With the time, they give this phase up. Let them, as Kalan Gibran said, let them be free. Don't more than necessary push them. They're already pushed enough by society and school. But at home, leave them free. Let them have their own inside observation. At least cultivate it so that it never gets totally lost. Therefore, he says, a wise person sees and hears like a child. Now, he does not say sees alone, he says hears. That's what I mean with active meditation. Can you hear without bringing in immediately the knowledge? Just pure observation of what's happening in you. Observation is never observing thoughts, it's observing feelings. Observation is never observing a thought process as such, but the motivation. Spirituality is not observing the outcome of something, a thought, even a feeling. It's observing the source, the root. That's why he says he sees what is in front of him. Not a copy. Something in front, what is alive, he wants to say. What is at the moment alive. Not a copy of something. The past is always a copy. The future is always a projected copy. But does not judge or discriminate. Now this is very important. Let's go back to Buddha for a second. The wise man who sees the world as an illusion. If you see that the world is an illusion, that it's only one part of the reality which is mirrored by knowledge, then obviously you stop judging or discriminating. If you look at someone, it doesn't matter how much you feel, don't get in the trap of all this energy business. Even if you look at someone and you see the aura, you see only a part of the reality. For example, if you see the mother of someone in the aura, you don't see the real mother, the reality. You see the memory, the perception of that person of the mother. That's not the whole reality. So therefore, the person tells you how the mother was beating her up, how the mother was bad with her. You see the mother in the aura, which is nothing else than the memory, the copy of the knowledge of the person who tells you this. You cannot judge the mother or discriminate her because you only see half of the reality. Ask the mother and you have a different story. And even if the mother would tell you, yes, I know, I was a terrible mother, I was beating up my girl, I abandoned my girl, you would see only half of the reality, because beyond is her motivation. What was her motivation? And of course, you will come to the conclusion, her misery started the moment, be very careful, the misery started the moment she asked being loved by the child. I deeply, out of my observation, believe as more your greed for being loved goes towards the child, as bigger your conflict will be. You do not destroy a child by hitting. That's not good, you shouldn't do that. You destroy a child, and you don't destroy the child as a spirit, but that it cannot rely anymore to spirit by asking the child to love you. put it on the spiritual level. If God is love, why do you need to ask Him to love you? What is this silliness? The asking is creating the wall. The wise person, says Lao Tse, who sees the things as they are, in Buddha's word, illusion, in Krishna's word, the ignorance, in Jesus' word, the here and now, and not being structured in time, does not judge or discriminate, not because of a moral structure, simply because they see, I can never perceive of someone the total reality. Therefore, I'm not in a position to judge or discriminate. Let's take again a child. Your child behaves bad in your opinion, silly, which is of course difficult. Let's suppose you have a child who goes into drugs. It's not easy. But will you see the whole reality? You cannot see the whole reality. The child is more than your genetic structure. It is more than culture, and it is also more than psychology. Therefore, you cannot do it. You cannot observe the child. You can only observe yourself. And the only way you can ease as much as possible what is happening is stopping wanting from the child that it loves you. But it's the same for with every. To come back to why it's so difficult from authority to move to friendship. Friendship for me means you are absolutely ready to be with the other person without asking to be loved. Otherwise, that's not friendship. So Lao Tse says, only when you see like a child again, only in Krishna's words, when you see the ignorance. In my words, only when you start to see that the only psychological problem is creating time through that greediness of wanting to be loved. Only when you see that, you will stop naturally judging and discriminating, because the reality is never revealed total. And therefore, to quote once more Buddha, therefore you will not get enlightened, you will not get liberated, but the most important is not the enlightenment or the liberation. The most important is the ending of the suffering.